This is Matt Welsh from Spiritual Media Blog, and today I'm here with Dr. Yosi Amram, author of Spiritually Intelligent Leadership: How to Inspire by Being Inspired. Yosi, I'm very happy to talk with you today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, likewise, I'm delighted to be here with you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, so when I first heard that title, spiritual intelligence, that really caught my attention. I'd heard about emotional intelligence, but not so much spiritual intelligence. So why don't you tell us a little bit, what is spiritually intelligent leadership, and how does it differ from, and how does it complement emotionally intelligent leadership?
Okay, great. Perfect question, perfect entry point for me. So yeah, most of us have heard of emotional intelligence, and before emotional intelligence, our world had a dichotomy. If you were a manager about to hire someone and you asked for a reference call on them, and someone said, "Oh, so and so is emotional," you'd be like, "Oh, I'm not sure. Someone who's emotional sounds like dysregulated, what have you." But so there was a dichotomy between reasonable and emotional, but emotional intelligence said, oh, no, actually, you can use emotional information and resources and bring the two together. So there's no dichotomy between emotion and reason, or the reasonableness and emotionality. So now we have a similar dichotomy between the spiritual and the practical. We think that if someone is spiritual, they're woo-woo, they have all kinds of weird beliefs, they're not grounded, so they're not practical. So what is spiritual intelligence? So by analogy to emotional intelligence, which is the ability to draw on emotional resources and information to help manage our own and others' emotions, spiritual intelligence would be the ability to draw on and embody spiritual resources and qualities that have been hailed by all the world's traditions to help our well-being and functioning in daily life. So you might say, well, what are such spiritual qualities and resources? So it'd be things like purpose, service, gratitude, integrity, humility, intuition, higher self. And these are qualities that now have been identified in the field of positive psychology. And there's good scientific basis that says that these very qualities of trust and hope and purpose and joy and so on actually help our well-being and help our functioning in the world. Now, what is very interesting to me that was uncovered in my research is that these qualities are common across all the world's traditions. So whether you're a Muslim or Christian or Jewish or Hindu or Buddhist or Native American, regardless of your cosmology and theology and metaphysics, if you believe in the theistic higher power, God, or you believe in Buddha nature or reincarnation of the soul, or Father Sky and Mother Earth in the native tradition, whatever your language, theology, cosmology, these virtues have been talked about and celebrated throughout these traditions in history. And now modern science is coming in with positive psychology and leadership development and saying, oh, these very qualities contribute to our well-being and effectiveness at work and in the world and in our relationships. So I'll pause there. I've said a lot, but
Yeah, so I think you really touched on a lot of good points about how these these spiritual principles can be applied to our practical lives. But one thing that I think stood out about your book, which caught my attention, is you're not just talking about our personal lives, you're talking about businesses and business success. And just to give people a little bit of background about Yosi, he may be too humble to share this, but he has an MBA from Harvard. I think he graduated top 10%. He was a CEO of a very successful company. So he knows what he's talking about when he's talking about business. So I've heard people talk about applying these spiritual principles to our lives to create more meaning and purpose. But how can we apply these to businesses to create better business success and be better leaders?
yeah, great question. So let's see where to begin. So I'll say this. First of all, I got an MBA at Harvard, and one of the first Harvard uses the case method, and one of the first classes we took in organizational development and leadership was a classical article about managers and leaders. Are they the same or different? So
Mm.
what do managers do? Managers manage resources and make decisions. And what do leaders do? Fundamentally, leaders inspire. Now, if you think about the root word of inspire, it's about
Mm.
spirit. So what is spirit? Spirit is our animating life force. So what do leaders do? How do they inspire? They create a vision. They create a set of values, a mission for the organization that aligns people, creates a community that then people are aligned behind this purpose, behind these
Mm.
vision, behind so but these very qualities of purpose and vision and service and so on are the essence of what leadership are. And these are the very qualities that spiritual intelligence speaks of. So, but let's actually make it a lot more tangible. So, in my doctoral research, I studied emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence and personality, looking at 42 CEOs and 210 members of their staff to see what contributes to effective leadership in terms of higher morale, greater team cohesion, and lower turnover. And it turned out that both emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence contribute to leadership effectiveness. So just to get a little nerdy on you, emotional intelligence explained 41% of the variance in the outcome of leadership effectiveness. Spiritual intelligence explained 47% of the variance.
Interesting.
Together, they explained 67% of the variance in leadership. So basically, you
And
want to,
let me pause for people who
yeah.
don't know what that means, like who don't have statistics backgrounds. What do you mean by leadership, and what does variance mean for people who's never heard of statistics?
Yeah, okay.
Because I know what you're talking about, but some people might not. What does that mean?
Well, you have to measure leadership effectiveness. And so I used a bunch of validated measures of leadership effectiveness where people in the organization would rate their leader in terms of how they affect them and whether that person is identified with the mission of the company, whether they feel a
Okay.
sense of belonging.
Okay.
So you have all these things that people are rating that you're saying good leaders are going to inspire employees that are aligned with the community, with the purpose. They like their jobs. They're happy to
Okay.
stay in that organization. They're not thinking of leaving. The turnover in the organization is low, and people are very committed to their jobs. So that's your leadership outcome. And so you're looking at these 42 CEOs, and some people are scoring high and some people are scoring low. And you're trying to understand, is it just random that these people have high leadership effectiveness score and these people have low? And you're trying to correlate it with these other things, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and personality. Like, we also think of people's personality affecting their leadership. So if you have 100% correlation, namely exactly the people that score the highest on emotional intelligence are also the most effective leaders, and it's just 1-to-1, and that's then you explaining 100% of the variance of leadership effectiveness is explained by emotional intelligence. But obviously that's not the only thing. There are other things that are affecting it. So you're trying to see how much of the variability in this thing is contributed by this other factor. And that kind of tells you. So, emotional intelligence basically, like they say, nurture and nature, okay? How much of someone's intelligence is their DNA, how much
Right.
is their
Right.
family?
Yeah.
And now we believe that 50% of someone's intelligence is accounted to by their DNA, their biology, and 50% is by the environment. So that's an example that most people say, oh, half of our intelligence is explained by this, half of it, the variability is explained by that. So 41% of the leadership effectiveness was explained by emotional intelligence, and 47 was explained by spiritual intelligence. But they are complementary, and combined, they explain 67%. So this just shows that while they're somewhat correlated, they're also complementary and reinforcing each other. So they're both important. Now, there's been follow-on studies that use my measure of spiritual intelligence to look actually not just as morale and commitment, but looked at actually financial performance. And
Interesting.
and what they found is that leaders that had higher spiritual intelligence produce better financial results for their business units
Interesting.
compared to the other ones. And they didn't find that for emotional intelligence. Now,
Wow.
emotional
Huh.
intelligence is actually obviously very important, but for whatever reason in this study that wasn't found, even though they used one of the best research and validated measure of emotional intelligence called the Baron. You might have heard of Baron. That is one of the popular, heavily researched measure of emotional intelligence. So anyway, I'm just trying to say that this isn't just niceties of morale and commitment and
It,
identity. It,
it affects the bottom line. So if I think I heard what I heard is people, the leaders who had these spiritual intelligent qualities like mission, purpose, that
purpose, humility, integrity, yeah.
wow, that was associated with higher profit, higher revenues, higher sales.
Yeah. And I will just cite another thing. So one of the world's top management consulting companies is called Bain and Company. If Bain is probably, along with McKinsey and the
Huh.
Boston Consulting Group are the top global management consulting. And they studied and tried to understand what contributes to inspiring leadership. What they found, and they surveyed like 2,000 companies, what they found is that inspired employees are twice as productive as normal employees. So when someone is inspired in their job, they're twice as productive. And then they looked at what are the qualities that contribute to inspired leadership or inspiring employees. And then they identified 33 qualities that contribute to this being an inspired leader. And what were those qualities? It was servanthood, it was humility,
Mm,
it was empathy, it was centeredness, it was integrity. Those over half of their 33 qualities map directly to these spiritual intelligence qualities, and some of them map to emotional intelligence qualities. So this is by Bain and Company. They have no interest in
wow.
spirituality. They're just trying to corporate leaders in global companies, and their clients are paying them millions of dollars
Right.
for their
So
consulting studies.
yeah, so I'm also curious. I mean, how do you apply this in a practical way? And I'm also kind of curious too if it, for different types of companies. So let's just start off maybe with small businesses. Say I'm listening to this and I'm a small business owner and I want to hire 5 to 10 employees. I mean, how do I take this research and use it to build my company?
Well, so that we're in my book and in my model. So there's spiritual intelligence, and then there's spiritually intelligent leadership, where you take these very same qualities and you apply them organizationally. So spiritual intelligence would mean that I, as an individual, have a sense of purpose and I have a sense of calling for my work. It's not just about, earning income and paying for the rent. I approach my work as a vocation, as a calling, and I see it as a way of using my gifts and using that to make a contribution, and that gives meaning to my life, and it gives me a sense of purpose and direction and a focus. So, just like as individuals, we need to have a sense of purpose. As an organization, as a team, as a small business, we need to have a sense of purpose. And if you define that sense of purpose and the mission of your business, and then you use that to recruit people, and then you
Mm,
select people that resonate with that. So, we're not just about making money. Yeah, we need to make money, but we're
mm,
here to whatever, entertain people or nourish their bodies through healthy food, or give them better medicine, or help them connect with family and friends, whatever the product is, it's hopefully addressing some basic human need. And you want to identify what is that human need, and that need is meaningful. And then you define your corporate purpose, your corporate mission, and then you articulate that to future employees. And if they resonate with that, then they're that much more inclined to bring their whole self and their passion and commitment to it. So there's a story, it's an ancient story. It's like, you imagine, you're walking down a place and you see three people, laying bricks and building something. And this is kind of an old folk tale. And you ask one of them, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Hi, what are you doing? And they say, well, I take bricks from here and I move them here, and I take this cement glue and I put it and I lay brick by brick. It's like, okay, thank you. They told you what they do. You go to the next person and you say, well, what do you do? And they say, this is my job. I'm a brick builder. I'm a builder, and this is how I support my family and my children. I earn my living. You say, okay, thank you. And the third person, you go, what are you doing? And he says, I'm building a hospital for our village in our town so that sick people can come here and be taken care of in this hospital, this clinic. So, if now, which of those people do you want to have on your team?
Yeah.
I think the last one is connected with the sense of purpose and mission of what they're doing, and then they're going to bring more of their creativity, more of their commitment, more of their whole self into it. So as a business, you want to articulate why are we here? What's our purpose? Who are we to serve? How does that contribute to the world? And so as a leader, if you do that, you're giving people a sense of purpose, a mission, and you have a vision. The vision is someday we're going to have a hospital here, and people that are sick, instead of having to drive 50 miles to the next town over, are going to be served locally, and it's going to help everybody. So you have that vision, you have that purpose that motivates people. So that's just one example that evokes people's passion and commitment. And then when people are coming together around this shared vision and shared intention, then they're part of a community.
Interesting.
So this is part of our challenge right now in the US and across a lot of the world, is this loneliness epidemic, and that the Surgeon General has announced, because most people are working remotely or whatever, and work, whether remotely or in person, is people's primary community. We spend more of our waking hours connecting with people around our work than anybody, our family, our friends, so when you have a group of people that have a shared sense of purpose and a shared vision, shared mission, and a set of values that say, okay, this is how we go about, relating to each other, etc., then they feel like a sense of belonging, and that helps their well-being and their identification and their alignment with what they're doing. And that's super important to create a cohesive team without the politics, with people all rowing in the same direction. And when you have shared intention, the energy multiplies. If you are in a boat and each person rowing in a different direction, you're divided, you're wasting a lot of energy.
Yeah, and I like what you say about creating this shared vision and finding other people who resonate with that. I would imagine that I think one of the challenges of running a business or being a CEO is hiring other people and employees who share that vision. So I guess, tell us a little bit about your background as a CEO, and how did you find employees who resonated with some of these shared visions? Because I mean, I would imagine sometimes people present themselves in the best light in an interview. So of course they're going to talk about how, oh, this work is my calling and I believe in this. But I mean, how do you distinguish, I want to hire this person because they believe in this from a good service place, but I'm gonna avoid this person because I don't want this person part of my team.
Yeah, okay, good. So let's see. I mean, I can tell my whole life story and answer the question. So my first foray into leadership was actually in the Israeli military. I was born and raised in Israel, and like all young men there, we get drafted into mandatory 3 years. Fortunately, I served in a peaceful time, so I didn't have to deal with the craziness that's going on in the world now, which is very heartbreaking and so on. But I was a shy kid, and I didn't think I would ever be a military leader. But to my surprise, I had the fastest promotion record in the history of my regiment. I won all these leadership awards, etc. But despite that success, the military, which uses a command and control model of leadership, really chafed at my soul. I mean, command and control is a model.
What does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean for people who don't know what
Well,
that
I mean,
means?
command and control means that it's a strict hierarchy. There's someone at the top that gives orders, and people below just kind of, so they control what other people do.
Uh,
And that's an effective thing if you're in battle and you're about to take over the enemy in that hill, and you don't have time to go into a conference room and on the board, build consensus how we're going to do this. Someone is going to be, you know, calling the shots in the moment, and people are doing it. Now that can work effectively and is effective in battle, but before the battle you have to build a cohesion among the troops, and there's a lot of camaraderie, which is why soldiers will jump on a exploding grenade or and take a bullet to save their friend. So there is this camaraderie, but and you build a team and so on, but at the moment of battle, it's command and control. Just boom. Now, in the business world, in an assembly line, in an industrial economy, you could sort of manage people and tell them, okay, you take this bolt here and you move it here, and the car is moving through the assembly line, and it's a command and control, and people are reduced down to things that today can be done by robots, which is more and more of the production that can be mechanized is done like that. But that can sort of work in a command and control model. But when you move into what you call today is knowledge workers, people whose skill set and productivity is not just doing mechanical things that can be automated, it requires judgment and discernment and knowledge and all those things, creativity. You can't motivate them and get them to be productive in a command and control model. So you have to inspire them so that they know what the purpose is, and then they can use their best judgment to support that purpose. And that's where, these more modern leadership theories and things like emotional intelligence and meaning and purpose and authentic leadership and conscious leadership, are new leadership theories and paradigms that say, the olden command and control model was kind of good in the military, maybe in an industrial manufacturing, but doesn't really work in a knowledge worker-based economy. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. I'm just going back to my military background. And so the military chafed at my soul, and I said, hey, I want to try someday to build an organization based on different values and try leadership in a more humane, inspiring way, which kind of led me to come to the US and get engineering degrees at MIT and at Harvard, and then be in startups. And then I started my first company, which was called Individual Inc. And that company basically created the first personalized interactive newspaper that you would get on your fax machine, scanning all the newswire articles, electronic databases. This is well before the internet. This is
Wow.
88, 89. And then you would tell the software which articles were relevant or not. And it kind of, you had learning agents that would adjust to you. And so you would get Matt's Daily News on your fax machine. Then we moved to email, then the internet, and then added ads that were personalized and all of that. So now your question was so the name of the company was Individual Inc., which stood both for the idea of individualized news, that each one of the newspapers generated was uniquely targeted to that individual, which today is like the common thing is personalized interactive media. But in 88, 89, that was
Wow.
kind of a far out idea. But the idea, the name of the company individual wasn't just for the product, but it was a culture that supported each individual. So we had from day one, I created a mission and value statement that said, these are our values where we're going
Mm,
to support employees' growth, and we're going to support each of you individually to be your unique, authentic self, but you're going to be part of this team and with team spirit. So that was kind of why I was passionate about it. Now, I worked really long hours, 80 hours and so on, and I got burnt out, I got depressed, I experienced what you might call as a dark night of the soul. And then out of that, somehow I had sort of what's called a spiritual awakening,
mm.
and where I could see through the illusion of separation and experience our interconnectedness with everything, the interconnectedness of life. And that kind of blew my circuits, frankly. I had a spiritual awakening, but it also became a manic episode. And I was a CEO of a public company, and that was very ungrounding. And so ultimately, I was put on a leave of absence by my board, and quote unquote, a voluntary leave of
Jeez.
absence, which was kind of losing my baby. But then I did another company, which was called Valicert, and it was about secure transactions on the internet. And I also managed to take that company public. But but I learned some lessons along the way, and at some point I wanted to understand this spiritual awakening that I had, and why was I so driven around the business, working 80 hours a week and burning myself out? So I started to mentor and help other leaders and entrepreneurs, both as an investor and as a board member. And I wanted to work with them more deeply. So I went back and got a PhD in psychology so I can work with people deeply. And that's when I
Wow.
uncovered this concept of spiritual intelligence and developed the theory and the measure and the research that I'm talking about. So that's kind of my journey from the military to of leadership to entrepreneurship and being a CEO of two public companies, and then
And
you
so
know
you left your work as a CEO, got your doctorate in clinical psychology, and now are working as a writer, a coach, and a clinical psychologist. Is that correct?
that's correct.
So I have a couple follow-up questions. So I think I mentioned I'm a clinical psychologist also. So, some of the people that I work with, they might be like a CEO or an executive director, and they're bogged down by bureaucracy, paperwork, long hours, and they're people of integrity, but they're like, I'm so burnt out. Like, I don't like my job, and there's so much bureaucracy, and I work 80 hours a week. I'm helping people, and I make decent money. So I guess how do you treat people like that who are they're very successful? They're trying to do good in the world, but they're just in a work environment that just has so much paperwork and bureaucracy that they just kind of feel burnt out or jaded.
Yeah, well, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to because they're caught between, as you point out, they're doing something that is meaningful, that speaks to them, they're helping others, but on the other hand, they're burning out and they're doing too much. So I think, the question is, what do they need to do for self-care? What do they need to find more balance and more wholeness? So we're whole human beings. One of the qualities of spiritual intelligence is wholeness, inner wholeness, and understanding. We have many parts, and we have our job part, we have our family part, we have our, friends part, and all of those are important to be a fulfilled, actualized human being. So I'd be working with them on how each of those parts uh, contributes to their life, but how do they bring all of those parts together in harmony to create a symphony. So if you're the director of an orchestra, you need your violin, you need your piano, you need your drum. But if one of those instruments is dominating the music, it's not a symphony. It's not as harmonious. So the same thing with people. When someone is working 80 hours a week, their work is important, and that's a beautiful part of their life. And they're contributing, they're making money, but they're neglecting their kids, they're neglecting their partner, their spouse, whatever, their family, their friends. They don't have time for that. So I'd say, okay, those are important parts of your being, and how can you bring your whole being into harmony? Now, if they're part of a bigger company and there's, lots of bureaucracy and so on, then have the courage to advocate and try and change the culture and
Mm,
streamline in whatever. I mean, don't be a passive recipient or victim. We can get caught in victimhood. I'm part of this big
mhm,
company. There's no way I could change anything or whatever. No, advocate like this is frustrating. No, we could do things better, come up with ideas, make suggestions.
mm.
At some point, if you're banging your head against the wall and none of that is being implemented, and then each of us has to search in our own hearts and find, is this the most fulfilling thing? Maybe I need to
Mhm.
make a little less money. I was just reading today an article, actually, it was in Inc. magazine, that said that during the pandemic, 40% of the people who left and took jobs with less pay but more supportive of their lifestyle that made them happier. So they also, at some point, we have to ask, if I have to work 80 hours at this place and I can't go down to a more reasonable 40 or 50, and I can't make the culture change so it's not, I'm banging my head against the wall on bureaucracy, maybe I need to find another place. Maybe it pays a little less, but my life will be more balanced, more fulfilled. So, um,
Yeah, I agree with all of those. I know certainly I was working as an attorney for a government agency and wasn't happy, and then I switched and I became a clinical psychologist and became much more happy, and there's still challenges, but that sometimes that change really can make a big difference.
and did
Um
it involve some financial sacrifices, at least for a while?
for a while it did because as
You
you
have to pay
know,
tuition, you
yes,
spend as much money.
yes. As you know, you don't make much money getting a doctorate in psychology. So yeah, for about 5 or 6 years, I was not making much money at all. And had student loans. I mean, fortunately, that's shifting now that I've been working for a while. But yeah, and then just, psychologically, you're like, okay, this isn't for me. I've got to change my career. I've got to, completely go in a different direction. I mean, was that challenging for you? I mean, you had, military engineering, MBA, CEO, business, and then now I'm just gonna, completely, not completely, but go in a different direction. I mean, what was that like for you?
Yeah, well, you have to let go. You have to, I mean, there's a lot of trappings in being a CEO. I was making a lot of money running public companies. I had a lot of prestige, a lot of power. I'd go and tell,
Yeah.
what do you do? I'm a CEO. It's a public company, blah, blah, blah. So it's power, prestige, financial. So you walk away from all of that. I think of it as kind of an ego death in a way,
Yeah.
because you have your identity, or I had my identity tied to all of that, and then I walk away from it. Then it's a question of, who am I without those titles, without those accolades that I can say when someone says, "Who are you? What do you do?" But as you let go of that identity and that egoic death, then there's a rebirth of something new, and shifting to something more essential about, who am I as a human being? We're called human beings, not human doings. So, you know, our essence is something beyond what we do. And when we're in touch with that life force, that essence, that spirit, that spark of life, then we're naturally more fulfilled, and our life becomes more and more fulfilling, and there's more and more growth. But that requires shedding these layers of identity that are not the essence of who we are. They're just clothes we've worn, and then we thought that's who we are, but that's not who we are.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. I think so much of my identity at the time was caught up in in my work and, I'm a lawyer. Oh, you're a lawyer. You should be happy. It's like, nope, I wasn't happy. And had to sort of let go of that identity. And I actually remember in my interview for my PhD program, my advisor researches grieving death and loss, and she goes, can you tell me about a time in your life when you had to grieve a loss? And I actually used that example that you mentioned. I said, well, I had to grieve this loss of my identity as a lawyer. And for me, there was a stretch where I didn't even know what I wanted to do. So it's like, okay, I mean, what am I now? So, but that, like you said, that helped me connect like with my real essence, my spirit, or my authentic self. And it was like, okay, if I'm not a lawyer, like right now I'm nothing. I'm not doing anything, but what do I want to be? And I was like, I want to be of service. I want to be inspiring, and got interested in mental health, psychology, and spirituality. So sorry, I know this isn't about me, but
No,
I
it's great.
really
You're just demonstrating what I said, and I was feeling as you were speaking. I don't know if you sensed, but your life force came
yes,
much stronger, and
yes,
I could sense the power and the conviction and passion behind what you were saying. So it was a beautiful illustration of you know finding our calling and feeling inspired by it, and then how we're more passionate, more empowered, more committed, more enlivened by it,
yes.
more joy, and you're smiling, and you're just you got bigger. That's
Yeah.
what I could see here, you know.
So thanks. I feel like I got some free counseling right there. So thank you.
Okay.
But um so again I do want to come back to just one thing I like about your book and your ideas is, I mean, you're trying to take I'm familiar with applying these to individual levels, these ideas to individual levels, but you go beyond that, and you go into the business. And I'm to shift gears into maybe a more serious topic. I'm curious, how do you apply these to government or international levels? I mean, so most people, I don't talk about politics, but given your background in the military, you're talking about leadership. I mean, how would you apply these principles? This is a tough topic, but how would you apply these to an international conflict between Israel and Hamas?
Well, I think it's a great question, and yeah, it's a little tricky to talk about it. But I think first of all, so what started it all, if you go back to what I mentioned, my spiritual awakening and emergency, was the recognition of our interconnectedness and our recognition of our, you might call it oneness in a spiritual sense. So the truth is that if we understand ourselves as cells or organs in a bigger cosmic organism, then our well-being is no longer just ourselves. It may be crazy for my heart to say, I'm the heart, and I pump the blood with the oxygen, and I am going to save the best blood oxygen for myself because I'm the heart, and I'm so important. Well, the heart might feel better for about 30 seconds, but after a while, the lungs are starved of oxygen, and then they're not bringing more oxygen into the body, and then the heart starts to suffer. So when we think of an organism, everything has a role and functions to support the whole organism's health, and there's no uh, taking care of number one, so to speak, as opposed to the big one. So if you have this spiritual intelligence understanding of wholeness and interconnectedness, then this whole idea that we can't achieve security, we can't achieve well-being without the well-being of everybody. And so that's a key piece. And then you can't, and I experienced this, you can't go to the military and do violence even in defense of your own country or whatever and kill somebody else without closing your heart causing some damage to your soul. So, you know, if we understand that, then even when we're protecting our whatever, our tribe or whatever, and we have to fight and whatever, we do that out of compassion, and we don't close our hearts. But you know, if we understand our interconnectedness, then it's not the US versus China versus Russia, Israel versus the Islamic world or whatever. It's we're all in this together, and we want to see a world where with peace and harmony and prosperity and dignity for all human beings. And I think that's, and if leaders took that mindset, I think we'd have a better chance at peace and prosperity and cooperation uh, in humanity. Now, this is may sound like radical, uh, you know, may seem impractical, but I think of it as a Copernican revolution.
Hmm.
Now,
What does that mean for people?
okay, yeah. So, you know, throughout till Copernicus and then Galileo, for most part, humanity thought that the earth is at the center of the universe. If you look at the sky, you see the sun moving, it starts at the east and moves across the sky and sets in the west. So it looks like the sun is going around the earth. And so are the other stars and planets, right? But, you know, Copernicus said, no, 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 we got it backwards. The sun is at the center of the solar system, and the earth and the planets are going around it. So, uh, so even though it may look like the sun is going around us, no, we have a deeper, more truer understanding that's the other way around. Now, if you look as an individual at the world, at life, you know, you think I'm a separate individual, I'm an egoic, because some people call it a skin encapsulated ego, and everything else is objects in around me, and how can I use them and get more of what I want to support my separate life? So, you know, what Martin Buber, the mystic, talked about is the I thou instead of I it. If I'm in a skin encapsulated ego and I'm a separate object and you're a separate object, then I relate to you as an it, like you're an object to satisfy my needs. But if I start to feel like, no, we're part of this oneness and you are a subject, then we have an I thou relationship. So now, what is the Copernican revolution? Is, as I said, in our simple-minded way of looking at the world, we're at the center of our universe, and everything is around us as objects going around us. Now, you flip it, and you have this Copernican revolution, and you say, no, I am fed by the totality, by the divine, if you want to use that language. I don't have a separate existence. So the focus is the one, the totality, and that's what feeds me, just like the earth is fed by the sun. All life on earth, all energy, all whatever comes from the sun. And ultimately, the earth is really an offshoot of the sun that formed from the sun. So the same way, I as an individual come out of this oneness, and the oneness is what is feeding my life. And so that's the Copernican revolution, where we take the ego out of the center of our lives and put the greater one at the center, and understand that it is like the sun that we are revolving around, and it's what gives us life and sustains our life.
So just,
So
yeah, recognizing this sense of connection that we really have with other people.
yeah, yeah, and the totality. And when we have that shift of perspective, then it's not a zero-sum game. It's not like, you know, how much more can I get from you? And you know, in this dog eat dog world, which puts us in competition and conflict, which is what leads to our isolation and loneliness and all these things. Because in that world, you know, I'm measuring myself by if I'm higher than you. So people like How do I get my self-esteem? Well, I make more money. I have more prestige. I have more Instagram followers, whatever it is that we measure our success and status on. So we look down at people that have less, and we look up at people that have more. So we're never enough, but we're never connected really, because the people that are above us, we feel less than, and people below us, we feel higher than. So there's no mutuality, and that leads to loneliness and isolation and constant competition and striving, and which is not healthy. We pay the price in our well-being and our nervous system and all those things. So uh,
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to. I mean, what sort of reaction did you get like from your friends and family when you started sharing this? And, what reaction did you get from people you worked with and even people you didn't know? I mean, what were some of the things people have shared with you?
well, first everyone thought I went crazy, which I did. Like I said, I had this spiritual awakening and see these things, and it became manic, and it really blew my circuits because, my my psyche couldn't contain this energy, which is so I was ungrounded and so on. But as I learned to ground myself and embody this more and more in how I am, then more and more people are like, oh yeah, actually it makes sense. And then more and more people are drawn to me, and and but embodying these principles is a lifelong journey. I may have understood these things, I may talk to you like I know what I'm talking about, and I do, but I'm still working on day in and day out in embodying these values. It's like, how do I bring compassion and loving kindness when I'm driving down the freeway and some
Yeah.
guy cuts me off? How do I do that in the supermarket when someone in front of me is really slow and whatever? And
Yeah, I think it really is a daily journey. I think when I first started studying spirituality and psychology, I thought, all right, if I just learn enough information and maybe if I, meditate enough, then I'll be like good and enlightened and like life will be easy. But it's totally not like that. I mean, things are easier now, but it's a daily journey. It's like I have to wake up every day and work on these things, and then
yeah.
it's yeah,
But I would just say it's a joyful
it
journey. If
is.
we don't expect ourselves to be perfect, we have compassion and self-acceptance, which is part of, spiritual intelligence, then, it's a constant growth and evolution and transformation. It's not like I get to some final state and I'm done. No, that's life is growth and transformation and deepening and more embodiment and more wisdom. And I see it as a hero's journey. You know,
Oh,
it's a hero's journey of our soul, where we, are ejected out of our home base, and then we go and we have to slay all these dragons and have these crises, and then we kind of come back to ourselves transformed. And all the mythologies of the hero's journey, there is that arc. And I think our soul, our goes through that arc of life. And you know, it's uh it's a sacred journey. It's not an easy one, but no one said it's going to be easy. If it was, it wouldn't be a hero's journey.
I- yeah, I can really relate to that. And the hero's journey is something that when I first heard about it, it really did resonate with me. So I appreciate you sharing that. Um, I know we've covered a lot of ground. I mean, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel like is important? And I also want to know where people can get your book and find out more about you.
Sure. Well, no, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of the things. The only thing I would add is uh, one of the things I think is wonderful about this hero's journey is the cultivation of these qualities we talked about. One of them that's super important in our human life and journey is the quality of love, and embodying more and more love, and receiving and giving and sharing more love. Now, most everything in the universe is finite and depletable. If I have $100 in my pocket, I give you one, I have one less, 99. If I have a bottle of milk in my fridge, I pour a glass of milk for someone, I have less milk, right? But if I have a certain amount of love in my heart, and I share that love in terms of an act of kindness or appreciation or whatever I embody and express that love, I don't have less love in my heart.
Mhm.
I have enlarged my heart's capacity for love. Whether you or anybody else returns that in kind, it's rewarding in and of itself. So if I act from a place of love, I feel more love, and my capacity for love is enlarged. So if we kind of understand that and understand that love is not scarce, but is self-renewing, and it's kind of creates a perpetual energy motion machine. And likely, if I act in a loving way and kind way to my neighbor, to my partner, to my friends, they're going to reciprocate. My relationships will be better. But I'm saying, even if they don't, it still feels good. And so getting in touch with our heart's capacity for love and expressing it. And I'm not just talking romantic love. It just can be kindness, it could be generosity, it could be appreciation, and it could be a work environment. How does love look in a work environment? It's not like you're going to stand there and say, "Oh, I love you, I love you." No, that's not going to be appropriate from a boundary standpoint. But sharing appreciation, gratitude, collaboration, informing is all expressions of love. And I think it makes us happier and more effective.
It absolutely. And I think along those lines, I think one thing that helps me is just asking myself, what decision is going to serve the best and highest good for everyone involved in here? And when I ask that question, one thing it does is it slows me down, which is good. But then it also really does. It's like, okay, maybe I should, I'll make this extra phone call, or I'll give this person an extra 10 minutes. Or maybe sometimes it means like, no, I'm going to take 10 extra minutes for myself just to decompress and relax before I move forward. So, yeah, I mean, acting from that state of service and love, it not only does it just feel good, but it does also tend to produce those more positive outcomes for you and the people that you're surrounded by.
Yeah, no, I love that question. To me, as I see it, as getting you in touch with your higher self. It's like
Yeah.
what serves the highest good for the greater whole. That
Yeah.
immediately shifts the perspective from the separate egoic self to the oneness. That's kind of like a shift of perspective, that Copernican revolution. All of a sudden, you're looking for the well-being of the one, and you're just in service of that big one, the highest good for the greatest whole. And
Yeah, it gets me out of my ego. And yeah, I mean, sometimes that means, okay, I'm gonna do an extra counseling session, or sometimes it means, no, I'm gonna leave early because I need to take care of my son. Like it's really interesting, or really interesting, where, or I'm gonna take the day off and go to a yoga class. So it really, it does, at least, yeah, looking at it from that perspective is very helpful.
yeah, and then you come back the next day and you're more resourced and more present with
Right.
your client, so it improves
Yeah.
their quality and effectiveness and productivity.
Exactly. Well, this
But
is, yeah.
so just going back to your other thing that you asked, is how can people find out more about me and connect? If I can offer that as
Yes. Yes.
so I have a website called yosiamram.net, just like my name, YOSIAMRAM. It's two M's, like Mary.net. And it's kind of the umbrella site that connects to my coaching website, to my psychotherapy website. There's also a website that it connects to that offers spiritual intelligence and spiritually intelligent leadership assessments. There's a free assessment where people can get
Oh,
the
nice.
profile of strengths, if I'm strong in mindfulness or gratitude or integrity, but I could do better on intuition or whatever. It's relative to the person, where and gives tips for development and practices. And then I also host monthly free events for awakening spiritual intelligence. So we had one on love and one on purpose. There's one coming up on beauty and so on. So each month there's a free event. The people participate in exercises. We're building a community around people that are motivated to cultivate these qualities in themselves and spread them out throughout the world. So anyway, that's all at yosiamram.net. And also, tell more about my book and sample chapters. And so
That's
that's my commercial.
that's great. And I want to hear just a little bit more about your coaching, because tell us a little bit about that, because I think you offer some unique services and perspectives.
Well, my coaching is focused on CEOs, primarily in the tech world. The reason I do that is that I see there's a multiplicative ripple effect when the CEO gets transformed and healed and brings greater meaning and purpose and integrity and humility to their work. The entire culture and organization is transformed, and then those people go home and are bringing some of that positive energy to their people. So for me, it's a way of having greater impact. So yeah, I mean, so in doing that, I draw on the fact that I have been a CEO and built two companies through their public offerings. I've had my own ups and downs of getting pushed out of my own company. I've been involved in taking companies public, selling, buying companies. So I bring my business background, but the spiritual intelligence lens and this clinical psychology lens. So I meet the person holistically at all those levels, and that's very rewarding for me and for them.
That's fantastic. Well, this has just been a very inspiring and practical conversation. I love how you take these ideas and not only apply it to the individual, but also to the business. I think that's just a very unique perspective and background that you bring to these ideas. So thank you so much for being here with us today. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored and delighted.